Hello, my name is Dave, reaching out to you today from Q's Incorporated in Amherst, New Hampshire. Standing in front here of our brand new M43R that we have in stock. You can see it's a beautiful truck, aluminum crossbox, aluminum bed. We're going to install aluminum boxes, fenders over the wheels, make a nice package for anybody who's looking. What I want to talk to you specifically about today is something that is oftentimes overlooked in the maintenance process of your aerial device, and that's greasing the rotation bearing. And for those who are not familiar with the rotation bearing, it is a large bearing that has gear teeth on the outside, bolt holes on the top side, bolt holes on the bottom side, and it's what holds your entire aerial device to your pedestal. That is by far the hardest working bearing on your aerial device. And if I had to guess, I would say by far the most overlooked when it comes to maintenance. Lubrication is very important for the life of any bearing or anything that gets any type of pressure, friction. So we're going to go directly to that, and I'll show you how to do that. What I'm going to do now is fire up the truck and set up the boom to show you how to get access to a rotation bearing. Every aerial device out there that rotates has a rotation bearing. Elliott, Versalift, you name it, they all have them. So they all need maintenance whether you have an Elliott or not. The easiest way to get to your rotation bearing where it needs grease is by picking the boom right up. It's out of your way. You can rotate it without obstructing anything else or coming close to anything else. Majority of bearings have only one grease fitting. Occasionally you'll see a bearing with two grease fittings. And now I'll walk you through how to grease it and the process used. So with the boom out of the way, we take a peek into the turret. Most turrets have a lot going on inside of them with hoses and wires and hydraulic swivels and so on. You also see, if you look carefully, a ring of grade 8 bolts that hold your rotation bearing, will actually hold the turret to your rotation bearing, and that is the muscle behind your aerial device right there. Without those bolts, you're going over. So we're going to look for a grease fitting, and they're oftentimes hard to find, but trust me, every one of them has a grease fitting. I see this one here. It's underneath these hoses and wires, and there's one grease fitting sticking up there. I don't know if you can see it. Got that? Yep. You see it? All right. So that's the one fitting required to grease this entire bearing. So we're going to clip on to the fitting, and then I'll describe the process used. And what the manufacturers recommend is that you distribute grease evenly while rotating the aerial device. Okay, we're plugged into the grease fitting. I'm going to start the truck up and go through the process. Manufacturers recommend distributing grease every 90 degrees. So start here, go 90 degrees, distribute, 90 degrees, distribute, and so on. What I like to do is be a little more thorough, maybe stop a few additional times and distribute a little less grease each time, so the grease is more evenly distributed. Our cameraman here, Tony, also our marketing manager, just asked me, how do you know when you have enough grease in there? And there is no visual that'll tell you unless you're just pumping it in full, and it's going to break the dust seal and it's going to come out the bottom, and you don't want to be there. That's not recommended. It's not like a pillow block bearing or a ball joint where you pump out the old grease, pump in the new grease. You just want to make sure that there is lubrication in that bearing. Don't over grease it, it's not good. We'll start at this point. What I'll do is distribute a little grease. Okay. There you have it. That's a properly lubricated rotation gear. And don't underestimate how hard that gear works, and that combination gear and bearing. It is a very hard-working piece of your equipment. We also need to talk a little bit about what type of grease to use in this machine. All the lift manufacturers that I'm aware of require an EP1 or an EP2 grease. EP meaning extra pressure. Some are known as high pressure grease, extreme pressure grease. It's all basically all the same stuff. Other characteristics that those high pressure greases have are a very high melting point and a very, very low freezing point. summed up means that the grease stays in place. It's not going to melt and fall to the bottom of your bearing and be completely useless. What we're going to do now is directly related to your rotation gear is a rotation gear box. That's what drives your gear. When you're lubricating that rotation gear, you're going to see a little grease fitting on the top of your gearbox. Yes, this gearbox is filled with gear oil, but there's a bearing up here, cone bearing, that is under pressure, and it doesn't get oil because gear oil doesn't splash up to the top of it and it's not pumped in there. So that's why it has a little grease fitting up there. So what we're going to do is just give it one little shot. That's it. You don't need more than that, because if you put too much grease in there now, you're going to start contaminating your gear oil. So there's a fine line. Of course, this is always a lot easier when you're using an electric grease gun. It saves on the elbow grease. No pun intended. One more thing on the rotation system. And Tony, if you can take a shot of the pinion gear on the end of that gearbox. Yep. Up in there, you'll see that that's what drives the entire turret. And those gears are on the outside of your rotation. I'm sorry, excuse me. Those teeth are on the outside of your rotation gear. And they need lubrication as well. Using a high pressure grease and distributing evenly throughout the bearing is good. Or you can also get a spray-on open gear lube, which makes it a lot easier. You want to keep an eye out for contamination on that gear. It's pretty well hidden, but sometimes things get in there. If you do that and follow these steps, you're going to have a really nice record of maintenance and great longevity for your rotation system. If you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to give us a call. You can find us on the internet at qsequip.com. Call us at 800-258-1010. Be glad to give you pointers. If you don't have manuals for your equipment, doesn't matter what it is, we'll get you service manuals. If you need parts, you need grease, you need anything at all, we can hook you up. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.